Hey, welcome to the Automation Guild, where we all get together to help each other with test automation. I'm your host, Joe, from joecolantonio.com, testtalks.com, and Guild Conferences, a blog, podcast, and online conference platform dedicated 100% to helping you succeed with creating automation awesomeness. And our goal really is to make you the hero of all your test automation efforts. And today we're going to go over what I'm calling the pyramid of stability. Now, a lot of times people complain about automation, but there's some simple steps that you can do to make sure that your automation has a better chance of succeeding. And I'm not only a talking head, I actually work full-time as a test automation engineer, and I want to share with you what we did to get our test automation more stable and where we were before and where we were later. But before we get into that, I want to share some news with you that I've been following around test automation around the web, and the tweets of the week that I found on test automation that I found helpful, and a book that I think you should all grab. So stay tuned for all that. And like I said, if you're here on YouTube Live, why not leave a chat and let me know what you may be dealing with now with test automation, what you think you could do to make your tests more stable. And if you find this show valuable, why not subscribe or like it? Give me a thumbs up, and that would be a big help. So let's just get right into it. The very first news item that I came across recently. And we're stuck. All right. So the first one is test AI. Now, we've been hearing a lot about test automation when it has to do with AI and machine learning. I'm getting distracted by the comments, but I talked to, this is a new tool I just found out for. I actually signed up for the beta, and I just checked this morning, and the beta is no longer available, but they have an option to request a demo. This tool is actually by Jason Arbin. Jason Arbin is one of the co-authors of the How Google Tests Software. He also joined us last year for Automation Guild 2017, and he's going to be joining us again, actually, for Automation Guild 2018. If you're not familiar with Automation Guild, head on over to automationguild.com and learn about an online conference dedicated 100% to helping you with test automation, where you'll learn a tip, tool, or technique to help you succeed with your test automation efforts. So if you really want to accelerate your automation efforts in 2018, head on over to automationguild.com. We're actually the main sponsor for today's show. And Jason Arbin is going to be one of those speakers. And Test AI, the reason why I think we're learning more about AI is I think it's a buzzword, right? Back a few years ago, VR was the biggest buzzword, and all of a sudden you found companies throwing VR and money at VR companies. It's the same thing we've been seeing with test automation. We talked about this in the past on previous shows on AI with automation, and this is one of the actual first new tools that I actually came across. I haven't tried it yet, but I did sign up for the demo, so stay tuned for future episodes where we'll dive in a little bit to this. But I actually spoke to Jason Arbin on Test Talks, and that'll be released in a few moments, in a few weeks. But let's just listen in really quick on an interesting way that test automation, how he's using AI bots to find about coverage that I thought was kind of cool. Run the test for you, use AI, machine learning, but is it able to analyze, say you have a build checked in, and you have some tests for that build, but you don't have complete coverage. Is it able to do anything with coverage to say, hey, it looks like you don't have any test coverage in this particular area? Or is that something you would be building in later on?
Yes, that's actually one of the things I'm really excited about too. In terms of, because everyone, like when you ask people like how much test coverage they have, they give you the number of test cases they have, right? No one tells you what they haven't covered.
Yes.
Or even really knows what a percent is. So what we do is when the AI bots go through and explore your application, they keep track of every page and every element in your application, and it knows and keeps track of which pages and elements it has interacted with and not. So it doesn't know the entire fog of war of the world, but of all the things it's seen, it can tell you a percent of those things that it has interacted with and with how many gestures, and it's all logged. So we can give you a percent of the things that it's seen that are covered. So if you want more coverage, you can just increase the number of bots, basically, right? But you do give you a coverage number, like the first time actually against UI. More importantly, I think it's nerdy, but we also do some calculations to figure out that for every additional bot, parallel test execution, you think about it, that you add, how much more coverage you would get from it, right? At some point, you can get diminishing returns, right, in terms of adding coverage. So we give a predictor of like if you added, say you got 40% UI coverage, if you added another 40 bots, you'd get another 10% coverage. But if you add another like 300, you might only get 5% more coverage or something like that. So we can kind of predict that, measuring diminishing returns on coverage. But we do have a UI coverage number.
Awesome. Like I said, that was Jason Arbin from test.ai. It's one of the coolest URLs. I wish I grabbed it, but it's test.ai. It's a brand new tool, and I think it only right now works with, or it's going to work with, actual applications for your phone. That's what his other company, AppDiff, deals with. And I signed up for the beta, and once I learn more about it, I'll probably do a show on it. But I think it's pretty interesting. What really concerns me a lot of times is sometimes companies have thousands of tests, but when you ask them, okay, well, what's covered and what's not covered, the critical pieces being covered, they can't really tell you. So what I think hopefully this technology will help with is maybe finding gaps that you may have in your quality where you may not have a specific feature covered at some point, but using these types of bots will help you. Like I said, it's a lot of buzz. I actually checked out one of these AI tools. I won't mention the tool right now. And I wasn't that impressed with it. For some reason, I thought, wow, I'm going to be out of a job. So if you're like me, don't worry, you won't be out of a job anytime soon. These, I think, like I said, a lot of these companies are really in the infancy, and that over time they'll get better and better. But I think it's something we have to deal with because it is a trend that I think is going to continue and go forward. Along the same lines, it's another tool I came across recently. I'm writing an article on the third wave of test automation where I'm going to highlight some of these newer tools. And one of them I came across was called Mabel. Now, where Test AI is for mobile testing using AI type software, this new one called Mabel is going to be for software itself, normal web pages. And once again, they're not live yet, but they do have a beta version. So I signed up for the beta, and I just started checking that out. So I'll let you know on an update how that works. But it seems really interesting. They kind of promote it as it helps eliminate flaky tests. Because a lot of these technologies, what they specialize in is that rather than have to use a spy and figure out, okay, here's this X path, and then the X path changes, and when you run your test again, it fails, or the ID changes, or your developers don't create unique names. With these particular tools, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't care what the element is. It just uses different algorithms to find out, okay, to identify this particular element, maybe it's located here near this image or near this other thing, so it doesn't really use elements. So you save a lot of time in maintenance. So anytime anything changes, you rerun it, and they're supposed to be smart enough to be able to pick up these changes. So it gives you minimal maintenance with high reliability. That's the dream. That's the goal. I haven't seen it yet, but that's where I think we're going. And here is a newer tool called Mabel I'm checking out that you could probably sign up also for the beta. Check it out, and then we can get together. Maybe you can join us on Automation Guild, on the Automation Guild show, and give us a demo of what you've discovered. That would be cool. And like I said, if you'd like to appear on the show or you have any feedback on the show, head on over to automationguild.com/show. And there's actually on the right a leave a message. So that's Mabel, another interesting technology. Not sure if anyone else has heard about it, but I haven't heard of it before. Oh, cool. So James has heard of it. So that's cool. James, let me know if you've actually tried it or what your thoughts are on it. But I thought it was kind of neat. Now it's funny, I don't know if you know Paul Grossman, but once again, Paul Grossman is going to be joining us in Automation Guild 2018. He's he calls himself the UFT Doc Arts Wizard. And he called people that are automation engineers that know both functional and performance are unicorns. And actually, I guess I'm a unicorn. I don't think I'm a unicorn, but that's how I started my career with performance testing. I think for automation, when I say automation, I say this all the time, it's not just UI functional testing. I think as we grow in our career, it has to do anything that'll save your software development team time and money, any type of automation. So it could be security testing, automation, UI testing, CI, UI automation, API testing, anything to do with automation that you can automate to make someone save time and money. That's where I think we need to be and where we should be help guiding our teams. One of them is performance testing, but that's just a quick rant. And there's a new functionality within LoadRunner it's going to take me time to say this. It's by Micro Focus, not HP. If you don't know already, Micro Focus bought out HPE's software testing tools. So that now, this is going to be now Micro Focus LoadRunner. And TrueClient is pretty cool. TrueClient is for applications that you need to test that aren't specifically web driven where the HTTP protocol doesn't recognize it. So True Client uses it almost like as a real user, it uses images almost to figure out how to interact with your application. So if you have like a C++ application or how to interact with applications, True Client is one technology you can use. And this new feature they just released in 12.55 is you can convert the True Client now to actual JavaScript. So JavaScript nowadays, pretty much everyone knows it. If you're working in a development team, most likely your UI front end is developed with JavaScript. So this feature is going to probably make it a little more easier for your team to get more involved in performance testing, update scripts, because most people know JavaScript. And so that's a great new feature that they just announced a few days ago. You can see the bit.ly link down below here, where actually you go there and it'll show you a little demo of the new feature, new functionality. So I thought that was kind of cool also. So, for some reason, the past few months or year or so, bigger companies have been acquiring smaller companies. And this is another one that I didn't know about. Ranorex was actually one of the sponsors of Joe Colantonio of AdSpace, and I hadn't heard from them in a while. And something I thought was going on, and it turns out they were just acquired a few days ago by Endora Inc. I don't know who Endora Inc. is. It's not like a big, that I'm aware of, test automation company. But I did find out they actually own Test, I think it's called Test Rails, which is a pretty popular Ruby test management application. Ranorex is a pretty cool technology because it also uses kind of image-based technology to be able to interact with the application. So it makes it a lot of user-friendly. They call it scriptless. And I actually know folks at the company I work for that were using this for some C++ applications for radiology type images. Really, you can't use Selenium for that. And you can't use, UFT was having a hard time with it, and they used Ranorex. But that's just a side note. They were acquired recently, and hopefully they'll continue to invest in it and make it awesome. Like I said, the company that acquired them also owns a tool called Test Rails, which is pretty popular in the test automation space. That maybe there'll be some synergy now where they actually have now a functional test tool that integrates with a test management type test tool. And that should be a good thing. Hopefully, I think these acquisitions are all a good thing, making things better. So pretty neat things going on there. So here's what I'm calling the tweet of the week. So if you have an interesting tweet, make sure you go to Twitter and use the @Automation Guild and let me know what your thoughts are on test automation. If it's something that I think other folks would be interested in or will help them with test automation, I will feature you on an upcoming episode of the Automation Guild show. This one's from Lisa Crispin, also a Automation Guild 2018 speaker. You don't want to miss her session. She's also an author of many agile test automation books. Really is one of the thought leaders in test automation. So if you want to get that automation and goodness, make sure to head on over to automationguild.com and join the #1 biggest test automation conference community in the world dedicated to automation. Lisa will be speaking there, and she was at another really popular conference called Agile 2017. And Jez Humble, I don't know if you know Jez Humble. I have one of his books here. He wrote the book on continuous delivery. This is actually a really great book. If you don't have this book, make sure you get your hands on it. I recommend having a subscription every year to Safari Books. This is on Safari Books, by the way. And really, if you're starting off with continuous integration, continuous delivery, how test automation fits into it, Jez Humble is one of the thought leaders in this space. And this book is a little bit older, but has a lot of great information in it and actually helped me with my CI/CD efforts. So that's a quick plug. As you know, I love books. So here's a recommendation, Continuous Delivery by Jez Humble. Check that out. But anyway, he was speaking at this conference, and an interesting that came up, there's a case study in another book by Jez Humble. I think it's a Lean Software or something, where they have a study where they Future Smart case study where they found that 23% maintaining test automation that they spend their time on. So they broke down. I have a chart on the next slide. And it turned out, based on all these other activities, they had, yes, it was 23% maintenance and creating automation effort they didn't have before, but it turned out to create 40% of what they're calling innovation. Don't know how you measure innovation, but however you measure it, they came up with it. So here's the chart that I think Jez was referring to. Once again, this is a screenshot from Safari Books, which I think is a great resource. And this is the book where he actually has this broken down. As you notice on the right-hand side, it shows before they did their new effort with Agile Test Automation, how much time they spent on each activity. And on the left-hand side, they show the cost of the activity that they found after they implemented it. And so, yes, before they had 0 time and effort into test automation. Now it's 23%. It's actually quite a lot of time, but they found out that before and after, there was an increase in innovation. So that's one of the reasons why I think test automation is really important. And this is actually a good case study to show you why that might be. So just curious to know if anyone else has seen this particular breakdown of test automation with maintenance, how much time and effort you think your team spends with test automation. The reason why, I have to stop saying that, the reason why. Because I've seen the same thing, that we have a lot of sprint teams and we spend a lot of time with maintenance. And I think there are reasons you can actually lower this. And that's what I'm going for when I'm calling the pyramid of test automation. Someone that followed up on this tweet was Amir. He's from Perfecto Mobile. And he mentioned that he doesn't find 20% surprising. This is actually one of the norms. And he gave reasons why. One of them is most labs and scripts are dated and flaky. I've seen that. A lot of times teams inherit scripts and they don't necessarily know what they're doing. They just are maintaining them. And it turns out, during a release, not only are you scrambling with manual tests, but you're scrambling to automate your tests to get them working by babysitting them. And the reason why I think is that they don't have a pyramid of stability. So I keep mentioning the pyramid of stability. I want to be a buzzword. I know people are sick of pyramids. They know the test automation pyramids and things like that. Sorry, Paul Grossman just said he didn't call it unicorns. He called it purple squirrels. It's probably even funnier. Awesome. Greg's in the house. Just in time, Greg. I apologize once again. Greg has awesome content that I think I've been meaning to get into one of these episodes, and I haven't been able to. And I didn't think he was going to be able to join today, so I was going to hold it off to the next one. So anyway, stay tuned for Automation Awesomeness with Paul, with Greg Pascal, later on at another episode. I won't be playing it today, but he has some awesome insights that he's going to share. I'm going to use that as a teaser for our next episode. But today what we're talking about is the pyramid of stability. Folks like Paul, James, Greg, everyone that's in the chat now, I think have been doing test automation for a long time. And I'm just curious to know what their thoughts on what I'm thinking, how you can help get your maintenance down with your test automation. And it's really simple. We were having in my team, we have 8 to 10 sprint teams, and we're saying you need to do test automation. So just as the definition of done, they have a check mark and they write test automation scripts. And we run them every night in CI. And they have an automated results for them. I send out emails every day telling them, hey, your team had X amount of failures. Here are the results. Here are the log files. No one was paying attention to them. So management, of course, what are they focusing on? They say, oh, your test automation is flaky. So we need to invest. We need to get a team dedicated to refactoring, looking into new tools, new technologies for your automation to make it better. And I was like, well, hold off. What you need to do is you need to think about the pyramid of stability. At that base, what you need is a stable set of tests. But before you can even look at that, you need a stable environment. And what we were seeing was our environments are really flaky. We have 8 to 10 sprint teams. They work in development sprints, so they all have their own environments. So they test in that environment. They throw it into the CI environment, which is different than each of the 6 teams' environments. And so the results are always different. And because of that, if something passed in one environment, it didn't always pass in the other. And I was calling the CI/CD the gold copy. So we didn't have any environment stability. A lot of times environments would go down or they would get corrupted, so we weren't always starting in a known state, and it was a really hard problem to solve. And because it was a hard problem to solve, they'd focus on the easier things of, let's refactor, let's spend all our time on refactoring, let's create a new tool, let's create a new framework. And you have to say, okay, let's tackle this hard issue. So we brought a tool in called SkyTap. And what SkyTap allows you to do, it's like VMs, but it's VMs you could create on the fly, kind of like Docker containers. And so you're always starting off with a fresh instance. And so each team now, we have a template of our environment. We have like 8 to 10. Another thing is we have 8 to 10 servers that make up our solution. And no one knew how to create a solution from beginning to end. And what's awesome about these type of technologies like SkyTap is they press on the button, say, I need a, let's call this, I can't give the name of let's call this Radiology Joe solution. And so they click on a button and they have a full-blown environment with all the different pieces that make up the Radiology Joe application. And that allows them to now be able to test against an environment that's fully configured, fully has everything set up to test their test against. And they don't have to worry about, this environment is different than others, or I didn't have this other option checked on. And when you have the other option checked on, it caused test X and Y to fail when it's, on the third Thursday of every Sunday, or, something crazy like that. That example didn't make any sense. But all these weird conditions that occur because you don't have a clean environment, I said, let's look to the pyramid of stability. Let's get a solid base, a solid environment in place before we look at these other, what I think is just, busy work that looks good, but it doesn't give any value. Let's tackle the hard things. And I was just noticing the comment, Amy said that their product team is about 80 people. Wow, that's a lot of folks. And Greg mentioned that he was late, but Greg is doing some awesome Ruby code. So I'm curious to get actually Greg on this show live to talk about his efforts. He came from a vendor-based application test tool, just like I did, and then he joined an environment that had Ruby. And I'm just curious to know what his give and takes are of each and what he's done to make his test more stable. So that's a little pressure on Greg, but I'd love to get Greg live here to share his knowledge on that. But hopefully we will. And the pyramid of stability is one way that our team and my company has looked for. And the very first layer that we need to focus on, they said, if you don't get this layer right, it makes no sense in any of the other activities. It's just all dressing. It has no, it's not going to add any really value. That let's tackle this hard thing. So we got SkyTap in, creating these more reliable environments. We used to have around, I hate to say this, but like 33 to 35% failure rate on our automated tests. And no one would listen to it. And so the first thing is, okay, the reason why is folks are saying your environment's stable. So let's get that fixed first. So now we have a stable environment, a known good state. So people can't use that as an excuse anymore. I'm not saying it was an excuse, but it was just one thing that people could say, well, I just don't have time to look at it. It's probably an environment issue. Let's take that away from there, even the thought process. Make the culture not even think that. So let's start off with stable test. So doing that got us a really good base. Once we had that in place, we're able then to identify the consistently flaky tests that we could say were not caused by environment issues. This is important because because we didn't know, teams would just assume, it's just an environment issue. Like, no effort in it. Let's forget about it. It doesn't make sense to fix it. We'd roll something out to our customers, and guess what? The customers would find an issue. And it was an issue we were seeing all along, but because the environment wasn't stable and folks didn't have confidence in the environment, it didn't add any value. So when you look at the pyramid of stability, and if you want to get your maintenance rate from 23 down, first thing is having a stable environment. So you're not chasing issues that aren't real issues. Then identify your flaky tests that aren't caused by environments. And this is crazy, right? Once you know the flaky tests and what teams own them, have the teams put it on their sprint as fixing them. Teams actually paying attention to their tests and fixing them? Really, it's like the most basic thing. Have a solid environment and have your teams actually fix their tests. That's going to help, right? We had 35% failure rate. Management's freaking out. Oh, your automation doesn't work, or we need a new framework, or Joe, you're not doing your job, or things, these crazy things where it's just like your test failed, fix your test, right? Right now, the past month, we've had 1 or 2 failures, right? Where before we had like 128, 200 failures every night. And when you have that many failures, you don't have time to debug them. No one takes it seriously. Now it's 1 or 2. I rerun them. Did they pass? If they pass, I'm like, okay, these tests, there's something off with them. let's look at them. But if they really failed again and again, that's probably a real issue. And that's something that now teams can go, oh my gosh, the test failed. Code I checked in may have broken the build, may have broken the application. So really, you can't do anything until you have that stability in place. So that's just the very first layer. And then only then can you say, okay, now that we know we have tests and we don't have real bugs now because we know it's not an environment issue. We've seen tests now that are consistently failing, so those are probably bugs. Are they bugs? Let's fix these. And then only then do you go to the next layer where you spend your time, and that is, when I say fix unreliable tests, these are tests that you run. They pass, fail, pass, run, pass, fail. Those tests are important and you need to fix them. But until you have stability and until you find out tests that are really finding defects, I wouldn't waste time on these until you then have time to focus on them and know that it's not an environment issue and it's not a real bug. Then stop focusing on that next layer, which is testability. Get tests more reliable when they run. You don't have synchronization issues or weird issues like that. And then once you have that fixed, then only then spend time on refactoring. Refactoring is expensive. If you're able to create tests and they're working, I know it's not optimal, but it's easy to just jump to refactor some code. But you have no idea of what that's going to impact. Only when you have a stable environment, right? And you know that it's not a real bug, and your tests are reliable. Only then, when you do refactoring, can you then get some good measurements to know we refactored A, and due to A, tests Y and Z are faster or they're more stable. That is only when I would invest time in it. Like I said, I'm trying to save time for your teams and energy and money, right? Because there's a lot of money and effort put into refactoring if you're just refactoring for the sake of refactoring. I think you should refactor, but a lot of times people just refactor just to refactor to make things pretty. I would say you should be refactoring, you should be refining, but only refining the areas that really are causing teams maybe to have a hard time writing tests or make your tests reliable. So that's when I would focus on that. And then once that's done, then I would start looking at retooling. When I mean retooling, it's starting to pull in other things for your test automation frameworks like UI functional tests. Then I would pull things in like that, newer, cooler technologies. So now you have a stable base in an environment that is stable, that isn't flaky. You have reliable tests. You have no bugs. You have refactored code. Then I would start working on the UI refactoring. Now, this is different if you're starting from greenfield application. If you're starting from greenfield, I would start from the bottom. Make sure right off the bat you're making sure you have a stable environment in place before you start creating all your tests. So that's what I'm calling the pyramid of stability. And a lot of times, folks talk about, well, I work for a large company. I work for a very large company. And they say agile test automation efforts don't work because you need to be small. You need to be Google. You need to be a startup. And that's not the case. This book is really popular by Eric Ries, The Lean Startup, 2011. This got people thinking about a proof of concept, the least viable product you can get out the door to get them in the hands of your customer, to give them feedback on your particular application before you start investing time and money in it. This is really a popular movement in the software development life startup kind of environment. But a lot of folks were saying, hey, does this work for large companies? And Eric Ries actually worked with companies like GE Healthcare or GE and implemented his lean startup concepts to help ignite innovation, test automation, continuous delivery, creating software quicker, faster, getting in the hands of your clients and getting that feedback. And with companies like GE Healthcare, a lot of times you have FDA type products and you can't develop quickly, or you think you can't develop quickly. So quick plug for this book. Really great book. This is my book recommendation of the week. It's by Eric Ries. This is how geeky I am. I missed the Automation Guild a few days ago because for a vacation day, I went up to Cambridge in Boston to meet Eric and have him sign my book. So that's how lame I am. But this book is really excellent, so I do recommend it. This concepts in here also will help you with that pyramid of stability, why it's important, and how you could start evangelizing it within your company. So let me know what you think of this episode. If you like this episode, give me a thumbs up down below or subscribe so every time I go live, you'll be getting an update. And if you found this information valuable, a lot of the folks I featured in today's episode actually are going to be speakers are sponsors of the 2018 Automation Guild Conference, which is the biggest online conference in the world dedicated 100% to test automation. Our goal is you learn a tip, tool, technique, or best practice that's going to accelerate your test automation efforts in 2018. Check that out at automationguild.com. And if you want to leave your feedback on this show, go to automationguild.com/show and leave a message. Like the video, give me some love. Let me look at the comments before we go. But it's a half hour, and that's the show for today. And I think the test, the pyramid of stability, is something that I'll probably write a blog post on if people find it valuable. Or maybe it already exists and I just discovered it and people already knew about it. But thanks everyone for joining me. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, James. You're all awesome. Thank you, everyone that's watching that are just lurking and not leaving a comment. Hopefully you'll join us next week by leaving a comment and sharing your automation awesomeness. I believe we all can succeed with test automation. I'm Joe, and my goal is to help you succeed with test automation awesomeness and help you become a hero of all your test automation efforts with your teams. As always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers.